I'd like to apologise for not being around much on YouTube recently, and the reason for that is because I've been unwell, and then afterwards I was on a short safari with a mate of mine from the UK, and there'll be some videos about that in the coming weeks. And in terms of schedule, I don't want to just post weekly or bi-weekly on some kind of deadline. I want to share stuff that I want to share and not stuff that is potentially crap. So today I feel like I have got something to share, and it's actually about preparing for a trip that I've got planned out to the west of South Africa to photograph astro, landscapes and time lapses. And if that strikes you as slightly jarring because you think of me as purely a wildlife photographer, I do actually photograph African nature, African landscapes and African wildlife. So if you do want to find out more about those topics, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to find out about my day, here it is. I'm on my way to Murrayvale this morning, and I'm out mainly to use my time-lapse rail in preparation for a trip that I'm making out west into the Karoo at the end of August. So yesterday I spent a little bit of time just getting to grips with how this stuff all works in terms of the eclectic pieces of equipment that I've sort of banded together to make my contraption. And I noticed that yesterday morning I took a long time to set up, so I'm hoping I won't be doing that this morning, that I'm ready. And preparedness before going out into the field is really important. Just things like getting your lav mic on before you go out, stuff that you don't really feel like doing but you have to do before you get in the car, drive all this way, because when you get on site you just don't have time, particularly with the video as well, to do a lot of the stuff that you might normally do to get set up. And that's particularly true with this time-lapse rail. Things like the timing settings for night to day, they're fairly complex. The ramping that has to go on for the exposure. And I wanted to get as much as that done the night before, so the setup of the routine hopefully is ready to go when I construct this thing and try and get it into place in the pitch dark and try and frame a subject to run a time lapse on. So let's see, you never know. I'll have to go out there and do it, and I'm thinking that doing this kind of thing on the trip out west will hopefully allow me to add another component to some of the videos that I bring back and some of the shots that I bring back. But my principal goal in going out there is to take landscape photos and night photography, astrophotography as well. Flowers. Don't forget the flowers in Namaqualand. At this time of year, there's an eruption of flowers, and you have to time it very carefully. And I'm hoping this year I might have timed it right. So that's the plan. And today is a practice day to try and put some of that in place so that I'm comfortable with it when I go away in a couple of weeks' time. Well, it's been a whole catalogue of disaster this morning. I don't know where to start. I came out to Murrayvale to do a time lapse here as a practice run, a dress rehearsal for my trip to the Northern Cape in a few weeks' time, and it didn't really go that well. So initially, one of the syrups stopped working. Battery was flat. I must have left it on all through the night, having charged it yesterday afternoon, and that stopped the time lapse because that particular syrup, Genie Mini, this little turntable thing, had the time control on it. So I had to stop the time lapse before sunrise, plug that cable into the Tilt Mini and let that run the time lapse instead. And when I did that, I must have messed up the settings on my rail here, and shortened the distance that I had set for the time lapse. So you can see here, I hope you can see here, the distance is very small. It's supposed to be the whole length of this rail. So that was the second problem that occurred. And then after that, the ramping software on the phone, although I've looked at it now, it doesn't look too bad maybe, but the ramping software on the phone just ramped really slowly, so I had a really underexposed shot. Or perhaps it ramped because I didn't reset the area where it was measuring exposure, and the sun was slap bang in the middle of that, so it was exposing for the sun purely on its own and ignoring everything else in the scenery. So I've only got a time lapse on 2 axes, so that's the rail axis side to side, and then a tilt axis, a slight tilt. The pan wasn't working, and I've only got a time lapse about 20 centimeters long. This morning's been a bit of a disaster, but as it was a dress rehearsal, I guess that doesn't really matter that much. Initially I had a lot of trouble with the time lapse, as I probably told you earlier, and then lots of trouble with audio, not turning it on, GoPro having a manual mode set in it, so a lot of the stuff with the time-lapse rail was overexposed a long time before I realised it. And then I was photographing some really nice greater flamingo, and they were just walking around, and I got a few shots of that, so I thought I'd try some intentional camera movement. And this guy got out of his car, and suddenly I had a nice flock of flamingos flying, something I've waited for a long time. And of course it was all intentional camera movement instead of nice sharp shots of flamingos flying across the marshes out here. So I'm going to have some more coffee. I'm going to go back, probably write a checklist of things and put it on a phone, and hope the battery lasts on the phone when I'm out in the field, and just try and get a little bit better at filming time-lapse, landscape and wild photography. I'll see you guys next time.
Don't wanna sleep tonight at all. Just wanna watch them stars fall. But you don't wanna try to make up dreams just to be seen. I wanna lay here beside you, all quiet. Fire breath and open sky. It's not what we know, it's where we go. I grow wings and tell her goodbye. Oh, it's not what we see, it's what we choose.